Hassan Nasrallah, right from October 8th, insisted on creating, saying we will continue fighting, and Israeli northern border communities will not return home until we decide and until Gaza is settled. So that link is now broken. And in essence, the future of Gaza is an Israeli political decision that needs to take the brave resolution to go for a hostage deal, to end the war, and to continue fighting Hamas in the campaign after the war.
The US President Joe Biden gave a televised address in the Rose Garden of the White House to announce that a deal's been reached to end the fighting between Israel and Hezbollah in Lebanon. He said it's intended to be permanent and will begin in less than 4 hours' time.
Lasting security for the people of Israel and Lebanon cannot be achieved only on the battlefield. And that's why I directed my team to work with the governments of Israel and Lebanon to forge a ceasefire, to bring the conflict between Israel and Hezbollah to a close. Under the deal reached today, effective at 4 a.m. tomorrow local time, the fighting across the Lebanese-Israeli border will end. Will end.
Well, the president, who's due to leave office in less than 2 months' time, said that over the next 60 days, Israel will gradually withdraw its forces from Lebanon, but that it has the right to self-defense if Hezbollah breaks the agreement. He said his administration would continue to push for a ceasefire in Gaza too.
Over the coming days, the United States will make another push with Turkey, Egypt, Qatar, Israel, and others to achieve a ceasefire in Gaza. With the hostages released and the end of the war without Hamas in power, that becomes possible.
Well, earlier, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said he'd put the plan for a ceasefire with Hezbollah to his full cabinet tonight. In a televised address, he warned his country's forces would resume fighting if they're attacked.
The duration of the ceasefire depends on what happens in Lebanon. We have an understanding with the United States. We are maintaining our full liberty to take military operations. If Hezbollah tries to attack us, if it arms itself, if it rebuilds infrastructure next to the borders, we will attack them. If they launch missiles, if they dig tunnels, we will attack.
Well, in the last hour, Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer's released a statement saying the UK and its allies will continue to be at the forefront of efforts to break the ongoing cycle of violence in pursuit of a long-term, sustainable peace in the Middle East. We must see immediate progress towards a ceasefire in Gaza, he said, the release of all hostages and the removal of restrictions on desperately needed humanitarian aid. Let's go to Israel and get the very latest from Zach Anders. Good evening to you, Zach.
Hi, Carol. Good to be with you.
Can we just be clear? Has this deal now been approved by Israel's full cabinet?
It has. That's what we have from the local media reports here in Israel. And the cabinet, the security cabinet, is in lockstep with Prime Minister Netanyahu. The dissenters have been pushed out over the course of this war. There was concern that members of the Knesset and inside this Israeli parliament, especially within the ultra-Orthodox coalitions, or perhaps voices like Ben Gvir, would threaten to leave the coalition and create a dilemma for Prime Minister Netanyahu and a crisis for the number of votes he has in his coalition. But right now, it does not appear that those voices of dissent are picking up momentum in the Israeli public. However, there's been a snap poll performed by Israel's Channel 13. I believe another one of the local media channels here has also done another poll, but the Channel 13 poll tonight has the respondents that they ran on television tonight. 61% of those respondents did not believe that Hezbollah has been defeated and were not in support of this deal. But I'll stress that's a snap poll here on one of the local television channels.
Well, it's interesting to hear already the early skepticism as to how this is going to work. Just explain briefly, if you could, for us, Zach, the terms of this deal.
60-day ceasefire, and in it, the agreement is for the Lebanese armed forces, Lebanon's army, standing army, to move into southern Lebanon gradually and replace these areas where the IDF is currently staged or holding these areas of the front line. UNIFIL peacekeepers will stay put. The only men or any combatant who should be armed below the Litani River until the Israeli border, some 40 miles wide in some places, the only men armed should be Lebanese armed forces soldiers or UNIFIL peacekeepers. Anyone who is not party or member to those two bodies will be considered in violation of the ceasefire. This is going to be a mammoth task. It's going to be a monumental task. It was a huge ask back in 2006. When this agreement here for this ceasefire follows the 2006 agreement nearly word for word. I mean, we don't have I shouldn't say that. We don't have the exact text of this current ceasefire, but everything that we've been told by our Israeli sources about what has been agreed to is the same as what was agreed to in 2006. And the Lebanese armed forces at the time wasn't able to meet the task, move into southern Lebanon, and keep Hezbollah from building tunnels and wiring up their infrastructure the way they did.
And have we heard anything tonight from Hezbollah endorsing this agreement?
Well, Hezbollah has been a tricky, it's been difficult to really gauge the command and the leadership structure right now. We have some new faces that say they're in charge, but from what we're hearing on the ground, it's a very disorganized organization that is fighting in pockets with local command and local leadership leading some of the resistance efforts along the front line. And that's kind of the concern, because while Hezbollah has not issued any official statement yet tonight regarding the ceasefire, the man that was negotiating on Hezbollah's behalf is the Speaker of the Parliament, Nakab Berri, inside Lebanese political structure. He's the one that was negotiating for Hezbollah here. He's speaking very positively. Hezbollah, no official statement. They continued attacks after the ceasefire was announced. We had a very large barrage that reached about 50 miles deep inside Israeli territory, and there were some hits there.
And we'll have to leave it there, but thank you so much for that. That's
Thanks,
Zach
Carol.
Anders. He's actually in Kiryat in southern Israel. Let's bring in Brigadier General Assaf Orion, who is now director at the Institute for National Security Studies. And he is a former head of the Strategic Division of the Israeli Defense Force. Good evening to you, Brigadier General.
Good evening from Washington, and thank you for inviting.
What do you make of this deal that we've heard the bare bones of? Do you think it's going to work in ending the fighting between Hezbollah and Israel?
The agreement has several pieces. One of them is stopping or the cessation of hostilities, stopping the fighting between the parties. And that, I guess, is going to work. It includes also the withdrawal of the IDF forces. That's going to work. The redeployment of the Lebanese armed forces supported by UNIFIL forces, that's going to work. And then begin the more challenging parts, which is actually implementing 1701, establishing south of the Litani an area free of all non-governmental military assets and people or capabilities. And that is a challenging piece. Now, the new part is on the implementation. We believe that the Lebanese armed forces lacks more will than capability or capacity. So actually, the capacity building measures that the West considers should be conditioned on actual performance and meeting the benchmarks. We believe that UNIFIL failed together with the Lebanese armed forces to implement 1701 in the last time. And this time they will need to prove themselves better. And Israel, in this sense, distrusts and verifies. In this sense, you see the new mechanism or committee led by the US as part of 5 nations, probably the UK, France, Germany, maybe Italy as well.
Because as we were hearing from Zach Anders in the past, when it is essentially the Lebanese army, as well as a few UN troops who are supposed to be ensuring that the ceasefire holds, they were simply unable to do that. And given that, the concerns about what's happened in the past, the fact that we haven't had any kind of formal endorsement from Hezbollah, how concerned are you that this may not be, as Joe Biden said he hopes, a permanent ceasefire?
We should be concerned, and this is why the architecture includes not only the Lebanese Armed Forces and UNIFIL, but also this oversight committee of interested nations, and above all, as a final backstop, Israeli self-defense, freedom of action, enforcing whatever's not being implemented by the committed parties.
So where does this leave Gaza then? Because obviously this is a deal which concerns Israeli forces and Hezbollah. That has been a deadly conflict, more than 4,000 dead. But the numbers who have died in Gaza, more than 44,000. And of course, still Israeli hostages missing, some of them presumably still alive inside Gaza. Where does this leave the prospects for some kind of similar deal in Gaza?
First is it breaks the linkage or the bondage that Hassan Nasrallah, right from October 8th, insisted on creating, saying we will continue fighting, and the Israeli northern border communities will not return home until we decide and until Gaza is settled. So that link is now broken. And in essence, the future of Gaza is an Israeli political decision that needs to take the brave resolution to go for a hostage deal, to end the war and to continue fighting Hamas in the campaign after the war. That is evidently the situation. And the numbers you've mentioned, it's always important not to do just body counting, but also to differentiate between fighters and civilians. And there are a lot of fighters in those numbers you mentioned.
And just finally, why do you think that Benjamin Netanyahu has agreed to this deal in Lebanon now?
Basically speaking, it allows the IDF to regroup, to recuperate, to save a lot of reservists and send them home to their families and to their jobs and to the economy. It lowers the pressure on the Israeli reserves, and so lowers the pressure on the anti-draft law that Netanyahu's coalition is promoting for its ultra-Orthodox elements. It also allows to restock munitions, and also allows to focus on Iran, which is the Wizard of Oz. That's the whole, that's the heart of this system that we're fighting against on 7 fronts.
So it doesn't sound as though this could pave the way for wider peace across the Middle East.
I think we need to be modest and realistic. It will enable calming Lebanon, where Hezbollah waged war against us on unprovoked and initiated by itself. We can shut down Gaza at our own decision. And Iran, with its obsession for destroying Israel, is something that needs to be addressed sooner rather than later.
Brigadier General Assaf Orion, Director of the Institute for National Security Studies and a former IDF officer, head of the Strategic Division. Really good to speak to you. Thanks so much for joining us.